practice, we are screwed, right? That, that the appropriate response to this is an appropriate parry. If they make an inappropriate parry, it's very open, or we're fast, or we're close. We may be able to hit with these actions just on their own merits, right? Like if we take that bind well, and they push against with their sword, and they don't use the shield as well, and they don't go in it, we might be able to just get it. If we're persistent or fast, or if we find our moment, we might be able to do it just because we're fast. But in general, we expect for these actions to be parried unless they're perfect, right? Or at least we find a really good time to do it, right? Is that fair? Like when you fight someone, you just get a direct line open to them, and then you get to hit them. That's what happens most of the time in tournaments. Well, we'd all agree that you got to stop it, or whatever. Who knows? Okay, so then what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about defeating a prepared opponent in ways that allow us to leverage our understanding of the art to actually deceive our opponent and make the openings that we want to have and the opportunities that we want to see. Okay. So in order to do this, we're going to start employing the idea of a compound attack. A compound attack is an attack that in our planning stage has multiple steps. But most of these are things that you already know how to do, like a beat attack or a feint attack, right? Like an attack that involves disengage. You would plan to do that before you start interacting with the opponent. And then when they give you the appropriate response to your preparatory action, that first action, the feint or the beat, then we're going to make a response to that, which we've already planned out. And because we planned it out, we can do it very quickly and adroitly, and then we get to hit, right? So, again, the compound attack consists of two phases. Phase number one is a preparatory action. Phase number two is the actual attack. So the first one that we're going to talk about right now is the beat attack. So when we are fighting with sword and buckler, often we have the ability to interact with our opponent's sword. When they are holding the guard all the way back here in Porta, we do not really have this opportunity to interact with and beat their sword because it's being held behind the buckler, which is all cross-guard, right? And so we don't have this opportunity when our opponent is fully in this retracted longer quarter guard. Likewise, if they're all the way back up here, we're going to talk about that in the next hour. We're going to talk about what happens if they're back here, right? But if they are out here or out here, then we have the opportunity to interact with their sword, right? We're fencing against their sword, and therefore we can do the actions of the sword on the sword. So the beat requires that our coach holds their sword so that the point of it goes past the shield. It can either be explicitly in this longer guard, where they're like this, or it can be in a somewhere in between guard. But if it's all the way back here, it's not going to work. Our coach has to give us a little bit of blade to work with. So when you're holding your sword against your shield, you're supposed to hold them joined, so that you don't give that action in between. But what we're going to do now is we're going to force the weapons apart with the beat so that we get that nice opening that we wanted originally. Okay, so when our opponent is holding their weapons to their sword, the place where the beat attack is best is if they're pressing their flat against their sword. Against their shield. In this case, when we get to make our fuse contact on the sword, we're going to expel their sword out to the side very strongly. Because when you hold the sword in your hand, you project force along the edge, right? That's how it's made, right? And of course, weakest to that force which we project along the edge is any force that comes perpendicular. So we are going to try to keep perpendicular to the way that the sword is set up to resist force. So if he gives me this, I can beat his sword off to the side. You will note that Diego has an unusually heavy sword. I have a much lighter sword. This is maybe, in practical terms, about half the weight. But it's actually not difficult for me to do this. So in order to do a beat attack well, what you have to do is you have to accelerate your hand, and you have to cut to, so I'm now going to do this in space without actually touching the sword. I'm going to cut to right past it, and then I'm going to start breaking my hand right before I would hit his sword. So I'm going to start breaking here, and then it ends up stopping here. But in the meantime, I have a high velocity hit right to his sword right before I would otherwise break it. Right before I would otherwise break my momentum with my stopping. So what this allows me to do is it allows me to make an action. We call this cutting to longo. We call this cutting to extended, right? Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to cut like this, because then I'll go past. Instead, I want to cut like this and have it hit right before I stop, right? So the people who are best at doing this basically are able to get the highest velocity of the sword right as they make this hit, and then they would be able to break it very quickly. And then they use the opponent's sword in order to do part of that breaking. What's tricky about this is that if you don't fully understand what you're doing, you can make a cut that's too big, and then when they counter it, it's really bad for you. We'll talk about the counter in a second, but basically they disengage around it and make you miss, and then once you miss, then you're all the way in the ground and you die, right? So you don't want to, you just want to cut the longo so that you're still safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut like this, and I'm going to make sure that I get that staccato beating crack sound, right? Like, it should blast his sword away from his shield for a moment, and in that same moment, I'm going to continue forward. I'm not going to pause. If I fail my beat, I have to stop immediately right then, and that's the moment where I can pause this, but I am planning to do the whole thing in 1.5 tempo. What I am not doing, that's too slow. Instead, what I'm doing is, right, I'm just sliding off and in, right? Does that make sense? So we're trying to do this in 1.5 tempo. We want that staccato beat sound. Our coach is going to give us a bit of sword to hit with and play. For right now, they're going to put their flat on their buckler. One other point on that very quickly. So if they put their false edge into the buckler, this is still good. If they put their true edge into the buckler, this is pretty bad. So try to do it when they're doing this particular thing, but most people do it most of the time, so that's okay. All right, so pair up. We'll get started. Remind you of a couple of things, and then we'll just keep doing this. But I want to remind you of a couple of things. One, I want to hear a sharp staccato crack, and I want you to accelerate your blade so that it makes that staccato crack before it stops. Two, I want you to move smoothly forward on the next action, which means that you don't want to go like this and then forward. You want to go like this, like directly forward, right? You don't want to have a pause and then continue and then restart. You want to slide off. So one way that you can think about this is that it's basically like a whip on the way to the target. You're trying to basically bounce your sword off their sword into their body instead of having it be like you smash their sword out of the way and then you redirect. Sound good? Okay, let's hold on. Counter to this. Does anyone know what the counter to this is already, so that they can tell me, but not to you?
Just dip the.
Yeah, you disengage. You disengage. So, I, as the person who I'm attempting to beat, person who is attempting to beat, what I am trying to do is I'm trying to make contact with the sword with an engagement of my sword, which is very fast, deliberate. It's trying to make this cracking impact. What happens if I miss? Well, if I'm bad, it means my sword goes all the way to the ground, and then I'm certainly killed. If I am very good, I may be able to parry the follow-up strike, but I have given up a pretty large opportunity to my opponent. This beat is very dangerous to do. You must be right that you can hit the opponent's sword. If you are not right, you are giving up an enormous opportunity, and we are now going to show why that's so bad. Okay, so now we're going to switch the role of student and teacher so that the student is the one who is receiving the beat. The student will then, in the tempo of the beat, very slowly. So Diego's going to come down, and as he's slower than that, very slowly. So as he comes down, I'm going to rotate my sword under his, and then I'm going to come up on the other side. Now, if Diego's very good, he'll be able to stop right here. But do you see how much more open this was than the initial position of our outside thrust before? Right? Even in the biggest opening that our opponent was willing to give us, it wasn't this big. Right? Now, if our opponent is bad and they cut further, they'll be unbelievably to this attack. So if they really think that they're going to get the beat and they put a lot of force into it, it may overshoot like this, and it might be pretty bad for them. Okay, so let's speed this up to mostly normal speed, right? And then I'm just going to hit him in that opening to the outside, right? In the same tempo that he finishes his beat. Now, if he's pretty good and he gets it, he might be able to try to beat and then try to parry. Right, he might be able to do it. That's fine. He's sick. Good. We had a volley. I didn't manage to get it. He didn't give me a big enough opportunity. I gave an earnest attack, and I did my best. So you're not always going to be able to hit after this, but it depends. They're giving you a big opportunity that you can't take. Right. Sound good? Okay. So again, a neat little looping disengage under it so that it whips past and then come up on the other side. Now, coach, what I want you to do is I want you to start off pretty slow on your beat, so that they get the opportunity to do this at the perfect time, which is once you've committed to this beat. And then, over time, I want you to speed up a little bit, so that they actually get the opportunity to practice this at speed. Student, I want you to make the riposte hit after this. I want you to, once they whip, get there. Okay? All right now. Let us switch. So, mustache friend is my anchor. Rotate once more. Imagine getting like that. Oh, can you imagine getting powder like that? You never recover.
You want to try it? We're like, we're trying to carry it afterwards. One more.
How does that one feel? It's really hard to stop if they do it at the right time. And that right time is critical. So you have to take it at the moment where they've committed to the beat where they can no longer stop it. Which means you have to be a little early on this disengage. If you're a little later, you might get this like blade contact that still like disturbs your sword. You might still be, you're like in motion, so you might still be able to come back around and then parry the follow-up attack after the beat, right? But that's not ideal. We really like to do it so that they cleanly whip, where we have a clean opening, and then we hit. That means that we have to do this at about the same time that they start the blow. Now, all of you are very polite because you are playing with your drilling partners and you're not doing this in the ring. The reason that this is so sick is that when someone thinks that they're going to beat you, they have already decided all of what they're going to do, and they're just committed to it, right? They're just doing it at full speed. There is no opportunity for them to change their plan. They do not get to bail on it. If you make this disengage in time, they are, I guarantee it, all of you, both of you are going at full speed, they're going to get hit by it, right? Only the very best people can actually stop this from ending up in, the disengage from ending up in a, yeah.
So that begs the question.
Yeah.
what type of fencer?
Yeah.
Would it be wiser or less wise to try to do that cut?
The beat,
into
the beat.
The beat.
Yes, so that's a wonderful question. So the beat is entirely a question of reading your opponent in the first place. The beat is good, and it displaces our opponent in a meaningful way that will allow us to get the hit. I hope you all felt that when you made that contact, it was actually pretty good, right? It does actually disrupt them, and it does open up a large enough opening for you to get the hit, as long as you progress immediately. But we have to be right that that contact is going to happen. So, Chris asks, what kind of fencer is going to be hit by that? Well, you test during the bout. I'm not sure, like it's a slow, it's a plastic fencer, it's a comfortable fencer, certainly. But sometimes it's a very good fencer who just thinks that their position is good enough in the center. And then they're not really fully understanding how disruptible they are. I could be beaten if I was surprised, certainly, and I'm pretty ready to do this action, right? Often what you want to do in this scenario is you want to try to assess your opponent for over time about their both susceptibility to the beat and interest in beating on your opponent. Because if often you are able to make a couple of like trial beats where you don't really fully commit, and so you're not open to the same brutal doesn't get counterattack. And if you hit a couple of those and their blade moves or stays stable, or they're thinking they're going to stay stable, then you can be pretty sure if you really try it, it's going to work. Similarly, if someone is beating on your blade a lot, often they'll try to do this in a way that isn't really laser focused on hitting you right after. They'll just try to hit your blade. This actually works just as well if they weren't really, if they were only going to like swipe past. You just need the opening right after, right? So if someone is beating at your blade a lot, you may have the opportunity to do this disengage, even if they're not like quite as laser focused on getting it afterwards. Pretty good. Okay, sound good? All right. Yeah. So be careful with beating. If you do it to the wrong person at the wrong time, you will be savagely countered. And remember that if someone is smashing your sword around when you do this, okay. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about making a feint, and then we're going to do a disengage, and then we're going to make a hit. So I'm sure you've done this a million times with other weapons, but we're going to do it here with the sword and buckler, which means that there are a couple of openings that we want to take. We're going to do both of the ones that are good, and I want you to switch back and forth between the two. So option number one is that your coach gives you an opening between your weapons. The coach is going to choose whether they're going to give between the weapons or outside the sword. They're going to give an opening between the weapons, so I'm going to feint inside, they're going to parry, then I'm going to come around and disengage to the other, and hit to the other side. Straightforward, makes perfect sense, very easy. Even better would be if they give an opening to the outside, so the coach is going to decide which opening they give again. And he's just going to parry with the sword alone, without bringing the shield along, because it's going to make it easier for us as the student to understand what we're supposed to do. And when it does, disengage my between. I'm going to make sure to keep my sword, my shields ready to engage with their sword in both cases. So if I attack between, and then I switch to the outside, I'm going to do that too. I'm going to keep my shield forward, right? And then you might ask, so that we can forestall this question, what happens if my opponent is a little bit better and they keep their weapons joined? Right, so let's say that I attack outside the sword and they keep their weapons joined. I'm going to have a bit of a flank under here. That's fine, but it's harder. Let's not make it harder. Let's just make sure that we know that something could be successful. It is a mistake for him to carry with just a sword, but people often do. And that's the best place to be. You can see that they're working with their weapons separately. Okay? All right, so line up with your partner, and then we'll switch again. So remember, coach is choosing which of the two openings to give, and then the student is going to disengage to the other opening. Rotate, yes. So, I want to make one correction for the coach in order to make this even a little bit cleaner for everyone. So I think that everyone who's doing the feint is doing a great job, and I think that they're not getting quite as lovely of a prompt from their coach as I would like. So what I want the coach to do specifically is I would like them to intentionally open up their guard, then allow the attack to begin. Then I want them to intentionally parry across in an obvious manner for the student that is fairly slow. Does that make sense? So what you're really trying to do is you're trying to prompt the disengage to the new line, specifically by slowly drawing your sword across. That sound good? And one comment on this: normally this happens way fast, but normally they're like incentivized to parry. Okay, right.
Yeah, I'm just going with the thrust. I'm not. I see what you're saying.
Remember to switch after 5.
Okay.
I will say attacking out there, still pretty well.
So I think most of you guys generally understand this action to the feint. Now, I want to add a very specific element about the footwork that I now want you to focus on is okay. So the element of the footwork that I want you to do is I want you to come into measure. Then I want you to extend your arm with a small motion of your foot. When the parry comes through, you then finish the lunge. And I want you to slow down until you can do this exactly the way that I just showed you. And then you can speed up a little bit. So if I'm doing this at a little bit higher speed, Diego's going to give me this nice opening. I'm going to go like this, and then I'm going to go like that, right? And I'm going to make sure that I get that little stomp with my foot. So in real life, you do not have to do that stomp with your foot. You do not have to partially extend your foot with your arm. You can either choose to extend your arm, you can extend your arm and your foot, or you can just go for the entire thing knowing that you're going to do a disengage. But if you go for the entire thing knowing that you're going to do a disengage, and you just lunge like this, then you are fully committed and you cannot change your actions, correct? Like we agree that you're in trouble if they know what's going on. Okay, great. So try this out. Specific footwork is exactly the way it is.
That's what it is.
Make the steps smaller so your actual attack is an actual
Yes. I think you're here. versus this disengage action, right? So, let us assume, first of all, that our opponent who is coming in with this feinted disengage attack is doing it at the right moment, that they are actually waiting for our parry, that they have feinted so that we need to parry initially. And that, so like, they've showed us the threat at other times, they've showed us a very good feint action that is very scary to us, and we believe that they might hit us on that initial line, so we have to parry. So once we make that initial parry, how do we redirect our sword in order to be in the second position, ready to parry the second action? Redirect any. So how do we parry the second action? Someone give me some options. There's some options. There's different options. Yeah, the buckler is still there. We can always parry with the buckler. Why do you not automatically parry with the buckler? What is it about this action that makes it so that parrying with the buckler is not trivial, not easy? Swords in the way that not true. Yeah, not super easy when you're crossing your body. That's true. What else?
They can just still come in at a different angle.
Yeah, they can always come in at a different angle. I shouldn't be going lower when you're trying. What else? Awesome, love it. Also true, I suppose.
I guess you did.
there-
I thought you were gonna teach us some weapons.
Oh, I did promise that I was going to let everyone die. Has anyone been hit by a buckler on the head?
Not yet.
Yeah, it hurts, right? It's like real bad.
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah. You said that with such relish, I almost believe you. Anyway, so, no, there's another important reason. Because the moment that we go for this disengaged parry is when they are currently parrying with the sword. It's because it's in tempo. It's because it's in the motion of the attempt to parry. The parry is still finishing at the time that we're coming around and starting to hit on the other side. It's because we got the time right. So they chose in their brain to parry with their sword. Then they're still choosing to finish parrying with their sword at the time that this is coming through. If we time this correctly, that is the problem with parrying with the buckler. If they were ready to do it, they could do it. If they were thinking that they were parrying with the sword, they cannot do it. Because they're not, well, in practice they could. Technically they could. In practice they would not, right? So I'll show you what this looks like. So the thing that's happening here is that Diego actually has to parry and has decided that he's scared of being attacked. That's the critical part that makes it so that parrying with the buckler is not easy. So here, when I go with this, it's because this motion of his sword, he is with the urgency to try to deflect my blade. If he did not believe in me, and he was restrained and controlled, then he might not be susceptible to this. Is that fair? Right? It's because he actually wants to parry, he's actually thinking about what he's doing, and then I get the time. Okay. However, how is it that Diego could stop me from doing this? One, he could know that I'm doing it, and that it's an invitation, right? And in that case, you can parry in any way that you want because you are ready to do it, right? So he is offering a large opening to me, and he knows that I am good enough to disengage and might actually do it. That, in a tournament, is beyond almost anyone's ability. Most people will just throw themselves at you with the initial line, and then this parry will work. And that's why the disengage is good, because everyone's expecting that, right? Because actually everybody's going at full speed. People aren't thinking about the strategy that they're doing in class. Okay, but what if instead, we're going to slow this down, Diego is actually ready to take this. And so what happens is I go on my initial feint, and then Diego makes a very controlled parry to the first location. He hasn't disturbed his sword too much, but he has confirmed that if I go forward, it's going to be easy for him to continue to parry. He doesn't even have to fully complete the parry, he just needs to be ready to do it and in place, right? So first of all, here, small. Then on the second one, he just needs to turn himself and then be ready. So how do you counter this? You're ready. That's the answer, right? So I want you to make that first parry small, and I want you to make that second parry neatly, and I want your coach, who is the one giving the disengage, to slow down enough so that you can take it through. And what I want you to really be working on the student, as the student, is to make small motions in both directions that maintain your ability to make more motions if you want to do afterwards. Sound good? I'll try it out.
Well, I disagree. You gotta parry. You try to, I'll try to disengage.
Keep joining. Like once you're joined, so if you invite between weapons, then join to make the perfect parry. Yep, and then when it's come on. I think you almost. Just do it once. I'll reintroduce that in just a second. Please only do the second parry and do it perfectly. Be completely certain of your second parry and do not riposte it. Thank you. All right, pause. I'm going to add one more thing to that. So I want the coach who is doing the disengage and the attack, I want you to continue to press on that second line for a moment. And I want you to confirm with your student that they've really got it. That they've really got that second pair. Right? Okay, that's good.
I'll just do it again.
On the second one.
I saw you dip it, I was like, you haven't engaged my motor, so
All right, pause. All right, come back in. So we're going to do one more of these, and then we're going to stop this hour and go on to the last one in just a second. Okay, so the last action that I'm going to give you is a different kind of preparatory action. It is an attack that's intended to lead to a second intention. Sorry, not actually a second intention attack. To a second attack. So what I'm going to do now is something called the Sturzhau in German, and it's very common action. In Italian, this would be called the falso cut, and it's going to lead to a good opportunity for us to make a second action. Okay, so we're going to make our cut to Diego. We're going to cut at his head. Ha. But I'm going to do it like a little lower. And then what I'm going to do is from here, I'm going to continue forward. So this is because when I cut in this manner, I angulate my sword upwards, and then I am poised to make a second action, right? I'm ready to use the fact that my opponent could be open over. So this is similar to that imbricata action, but I am anticipating a successful parry from my opponent for the first thing, and then I'm intending to overmaster that by angulation and finding a new angle. Yesterday, we talked about an action called the girata, where I attack on the outside of Diego's sword. Give me an opening to the outside of the sword. Oh yeah, right. I go like this, and then I finish up like this. That's fine in sword buckler, but we're not going to do it today because I can't. We're not repeating everything from yesterday. This is actually almost exactly the same action, where it's a first action that is parry, and a second action that defeats the parry, but I plan it, and I'm ready to do it, and I have a good plan, and it's a specific plan. So the way that I want the coach to make the parry, so that you get this correct, is I want them to parry with their sword. So do the also into the top of my weapons. I want them to do it exactly like this, together like this. So Diego, when he was giving me coaching just a second ago, was a little bit too high with his shield, and he was too good. Our opponent is not always this good, and normally they're trying to protect against that initial strike. Diego's also a little shorter than me, so I think he's expecting me to be successful at his head. Anyway, fair enough. But give the parry about at head level with your weapons joined like this, and I want you to throw the Sturzhau into the joint between the two weapons, right? And then I want you to follow up with a thrust that goes and angles over like the imbricata earlier. Does that make sense? There's another way to do this, which I'm only going to mention now, and then we're not going to practice it, which is that you can do this all at once as a cut. So if Diego parries in that same manner, I can just hit him like this through it if I'm a little closer. But I think that it's much more valuable to have the two thought action out. So again, like this, and then he parries like this, and then I find something. Okay, so one other comment on this. Be careful of smashing your opponent in the face a bunch of times. Please do not do that. Be more careful and slow down so that you can angle it over. And as a coach, make sure that you're not so high in the sky that the only place you can be hit is your forehead. Sound good? All right. So line up with your partner again and rotate.
Yeah, it's looking really yeah. I think the next time we just have a second camera set up so we can get a big angle. Yeah, this is Ryan Stone, so I told him about the Google Drive. Yeah.
And then that's the second action. Hopefully, it's also in the top section, but that's not. So I'm just going to do a minute of talking before we rotate to the next hour, but just to remind ourselves of what we were just working on. So the idea of sword and buckler is that you actually have a pretty good defense. You have two items that you interact with your opponent. So when two people are fighting sword and buckler, they actually have to get through a couple layers of defense, and it's more than normal. When you're fencing with longsword, what would you say the layers of defense are in longsword? So there's a sword, right? Obviously. What else? What are the other ones? Movement. Movement. Yes. I think those are the two. Right. So what is it in sword buckler? It's that one plus the shield, and that's like a really big difference, right? So whenever you're doing stuff that is intended to hit your opponent, you either have to set it up just right, or you have to do multiple things in order to get past their defense because they have multiple opportunities to interact with you, right? And so in this case, we have the option of making a preparatory action that allows us to have a better action afterwards, better than just a simple direct attack. If we don't take those types of opportunities, we're not going to be able to hit certain sorts of people. And it's the sort of people that we care about beating. We do not care about beating people who we can just direct attack. We do not train that. Who cares? We just say, okay, I did it because it was easy, right? But instead, we train to beat people whose defenses are hard, impregnable, who will actually parry at least one time, right? And so, that's what we're trying to do in this scenario here in the second hour. So get water, and then we're going to talk about slowly progressing into measure an action called anyway, yeah. Proceeding.